So let's get to it. Savior or a mere band-aid? Can Rishi Sunak end the UK's political turmoil? As always, we begin with our quick-fire round of 30-second each and pick up the conversation right after. Marianne, please take the lead.
I think we have to start by saying it is a fantastic thing to have an Asian Prime Minister. Let's just say that. That apart, he's very right-wing. He voted for Brexit very, very strongly. And I would say so far his cabinet appointments seem quite disappointing. He's brought people in from some different areas, but it does seem a little bit more of the same. So whether he can do anything other than just for the moment improve things, I'm not sure.
Jonathan, more of the same?
Absolutely more of the same. In economic terms, there's going to be a real chaos as Rishi Sunak introduces big public spending cuts, major austerity that people didn't vote for. Politically, I thought things might stabilise, but I think he's made some big errors in his cabinet appointments, not least with Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, who was fired 6 days ago by Liz Truss for breaching national security and the ministerial code. He's reappointed her. She's very, very right-wing, and he's going to alienate a lot of people. It brings into question his political judgment.
Yes, tough to determine which task is tougher, the economy or the Conservatives, and we'll get to that in a second. But last and definitely not least, Phil Dave, your take.
Well, I think the first thing to point out is that by the way, yes, it is potentially wonderful we have a new Prime Minister. I don't personally see the relevance of his background, if I'm honest with you. But let's just point out one or two things here. Yes, he does have a very tough time ahead of him, but I would suggest that there are some rather unforeseen circumstances that means that that is the case. No one could have ever anticipated Liz Truss's bit of a disastrous period, and certainly couldn't have anticipated the pandemic. So I think let's give him a chance, even if we didn't give Liz Truss a chance.
Okay, and let's please feel free to interact from this point onwards. Something you're all doing quite fantastically until this point in time, and I'm positive it will continue that way. Stop blabbing, Ellie. Cut to the chase. Can Sunak unify the Tories? Is he enough of a consensus to make something cohesive out of this party?
They just have no consensus. There just is no consensus. They are all over the place. It's utter disaster, and it has been for at least 6 years. I know we're going to discuss Brexit later, but that's the elephant in the room. It's just a disaster. The experts predicted it. They didn't. The powers that be in the Tory party did not listen, and so there is this total chaos. And I must disagree with you. Rishi Sunak himself predicted exactly what would happen if Liz Truss went ahead with her policies. So it was predicted, and by him.
Well, it may have been predicted by him, but that was primarily because he didn't agree with them, and I still stand by it. It's not as if Liz Truss's policies were ever given a real chance. I don't think anyone could truly expect that within 45 days that a budget as dramatic as the mini budget could have actually been given a fair hearing and a fair chance to actually do some good. I personally believe that low taxes is exactly the way to go. The more money you put into people's pockets, the more tempted they are to spend, and therefore they put more into the economy. So I find it very hard to believe that anyone could see that is not the case.
The markets don't give people fair hearings. They respond. That's what they do. She might have
sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly.
In that, well, that's just maybe, but Liz Truss's whole credo was that as a free marketer. So if you put all your faith in the markets, you have to listen to them. That was the problem, sadly.
But before we dive further into the economic element here, Phil, did the Conservative Party simply become ungovernable?
I don't think so. I believe that the biggest obviously, I don't think it would have been completely ideal for Boris Johnson to come back. And part of me believes that he should have come back to face the music. But let us not forget that 70 of his own MPs/ministers ultimately decided to boot him out. And I don't think that with that many people saying it's time for you to go, that you can then come back and start to unify the party. Do I believe Rishi Sunak is any better? Well, that remains to be seen, but I'm at least prepared to give him a try and see how he fares. I don't think that it's a case that the Conservatives are ungovernable. I think that there are many divisive issues across not only Britain but the world at the moment that are unfortunately causing people to have major political disagreements. And I'm afraid that sort of all political parties parties are the same. You can only have to look as far as the Labour Party to know that they don't exactly see eye to eye on matters pertaining to such as leaving the European Union or the way that the COVID pandemic was handled. There is division all over the place, and I think to just isolate it to the Conservative Party is frankly naive.
Yes, but there are
only
no...
one party's changed its leader 3 times, in the last...
Speaking to that point, exactly, can a third inter-party switcheroo be seen as a legitimate national leader without any general election?
Yeah, but it is legitimate. It's not about whether or not it can be seen as such. It is legitimate. That is the way British politics works. When a politician is elected, they are elected to their constituency. When they're elected to that constituency, where they sit in the House of Commons is nothing to do with the British public.
We've had this conversation before. It's legitimate.
Then I trust you remember the outcome.
It's legitimate constitutionally. The majority of the British people, who I think you might have some respect for, want a general election. They don't see it as legitimate because there is only so much you can do with a 5-year term that you've won in an election. It's not a carte blanche to do whatever you like. Now, agreed, it's constitutionally valid. It's not illegal. But there is a difference between what is legal or what is acceptable and seen as legitimate and democratically credible. Now, the prospectus right now is completely different from the landscape in 2019. No one's talking about Brexit anymore, though we will talk about that in a moment.
Right.
People aren't talking about levelling up. And we are talking about massive austerity, despite the fact that Boris Johnson very clearly said austerity was over. And so it's only right and proper to give the British people a say on whether they actually want this rapid, this completely different new direction that the government is implementing.
And Marian,
when the rapid direction happened just before with Liz Truss's government, that wasn't good enough either, though. So what do you want? It's one or the other. You can't have both.
Well, clearly, I'm making the same point. I'm making the same point that Liz Truss, she changed the manifesto. She changed the direction of policy, and that required a general election. I'm making exactly the same point.
And you have had David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, the new two, which are in a question of weeks. It's utter chaos, and it has been for years. And the Tory party have made a mess of everything. What about the National Health Service? There's absolutely no money. It's completely crumbling. I mean, you live there, I live here. But from what I hear from my family, it's utter disaster. So
yes,
the money
it is.
has
I mean,
to be
I would
found for
argue
them.
that the reason,
Where's the money going to come from?
If we're going to talk about the National Health Service, I would suggest that your family also probably tell you the main reason for it is there's actually a number of factors. I mean, it's all well and good to suggest that one just has to pump money into it and then that would solve the problem. But there is major mismanagement.
You can't be in government for 12 years and have austerity previously and then have no ownership over all the things going wrong. So what do they do? In fact, somebody even did blame a future Labour government for something going wrong now. I mean, we've even reached that level. It's just crazy. And I agree. I think you have to have a general election.
But why? They are democratically elected politicians. I don't understand the only reason that everyone's calling out now for a general election is from those who, frankly, don't like the Tories. That's all it boils down to.
Phil, this is completely specious. You know that no party has changed prime ministers twice without having an election since 1905. It's unprecedented in the last 120 years for this to happen. You can't just keep changing
in unprecedented times.
Being a prime minister, it's not like passing a joint around as a party. You don't just get to share it around all of your colleagues.
Not that we encourage that sort of behaviour, Jonathan, I'm sure.
Okay, and on that note, Marian, there are no voids in politics. Sunak himself telling Tory MPs the party was facing, quote, an existential threat. What would be the consequences of that, politically speaking? A new right-wing party coming out of the ashes, for example, UKIP?
It's very interesting because I've heard a few moderate Conservatives, some of whom have left politics altogether, some are on the backbenches, saying they think there should be an election and a kind of realignment of politics, which seems to be, with right-wing parties, what may need to happen in several countries, America and here, where parties are just split on their ideology. Anna Soubry was on TV earlier today. She's now returned to being a barrister. She was in the moderate wing, One Nation Toryism, which has just completely gone. It's so polarised. I think maybe it has to be a slug fight between the right and middle parts of the party. It's very difficult to see. I mean, look, if Liz Truss's in tray was terrible, and we did discuss this a few weeks ago, how it was beyond words, this is even worse. It's very hard to see how they move forward.
And to conclude the political part of our discussion, the richest in Parliament, flamboyant lifestyle, wife allegedly evading taxes, betraying his former leader. Is Sunak-gate just a matter of time, Jonathan?
Absolutely, and I think it's a very important point. We forget that in April, he was the second least popular member of the cabinet because of various PR disasters. It turned out he'd had a green card while he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. His wife was non-domiciled for tax purposes. He broke the law. He broke lockdown laws, which are the most important laws his government passed, and got a police fine, which would have normally been an instant resignation matter. So there is a lot of things that are wrong with him. It's only because everyone else is worse that people think Sunak is good. He's not a good politician, and he doesn't have good delivery either. I think that he will fail very quickly, actually.
Phil, in the little time we've
ever
left.
The optimist, Jonathan. Look, this may shock you. I'm not exactly delighted that it's Rishi Sunak who has been elected as the leader of the Conservatives and ultimately the next Prime Minister of this country. But the difference is I do believe in democracy and I follow the rules by it. That's what we've got at the moment. We've got him probably for at least the next 2 years. And let's just live with it. Let's give the guy a chance, for crying out loud. If he makes a total mess of it, then we'll have this discussion again, I'm sure, no doubt. And I'll say, you know what, you're right.
It's a pity they don't follow the rules.